sometimes I'm on Twitter and I hear somebody say something silly that I know the objections against Freemasonry from the Catholic perspective, and I like to stick it there. I don't like to get into the conspiracies and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
right.
And so sometimes on Twitter, I hear someone say, "Oh, that's Freemasonry or Freemasonic," and then I like to point out that, well, here's what the church teaches why we can't be Freemasons. And somebody said, I heard a couple of people say, "Oh, David, you're still a Freemason. You sound like you're defending Freemasonry."
I hate that.
What?
I get that too.
Just because you're telling the truth. But do people like question you, John, because do they like, even though you got sort of duped into this in a sense as a young man, but
Right.
then do they want to like also challenge you because you also spend some time in the SSPX, yet now there's some aspects
Yeah.
that you talk about it now, and do they want to like impute your credibility?
Yeah. I mean, think about it. If that were legitimate, they could have discredited St. Paul, right? I mean, it's so, you talk about ad hominem. I mean, anytime I take a position that's maybe contrary to someone else's position, and it's ad hominem, looking back at your background. Well, you were a Freemason, so you have no credibility. That itself reveals all it needs to reveal, right? That means you don't have any substantive rebuttal to the merits of my argument, so you want to discredit our credibility. And that's fine. We'll live with that. I mean, everybody has a past. Everybody goes through situations in their lives which leads them to the truth. And for you and I, God used this institution of Freemasonry to bring us where we are today. But I unfortunately still find people, especially the more conspiracy-oriented people, saying, "Oh, they must still be Freemasons, and therefore, because John is opposing, traditionalist groups, he's still secretly a Freemason." It's just completely nonsensical. I mean,
That's
look,
funny.
I'm standing with the magisterium.
If you heard that. I was wondering if you've heard that objection. That's interesting that you have.
Yeah, of course, all the time. And sometimes it's explicit, sometimes it's very subtle. You got to be careful of those apron wearing guys, stuff like that. It's ludicrous and it's unfortunate,
Wow.
but it says it all. To me, that that's where where they're really coming from.
You're much better at that than me. Whenever somebody hears somebody say on Twitter, it's not that often, but one of those people. Oftentimes it's a SETI for contest. When I'm, they want because I'm saying something that they say is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like the other day, I was saying one of those SETIs were saying, "Oh, you're not going to mass if you don't go to this type of mass," something like that. And so I say something about that. They say, "Oh, he's just, you're saying you're probably still a Freemason," and then I'm not that. Sometimes people can catch me when I'm not that nice. And it's often those people, and so I always tend to say, "Oh, your mom's a Freemason," something like that, And so I get kind of childish.
Women can't be Freemasons. Sorry. I didn't mention this, but I've mentioned it before. David, when I was being recruited and was going through this, I actually asked my parish priest whether I could be a Freemasonry. I mean, I was a pretty good Catholic for a guy in his 20s. I mean, I pat myself on the back. How many guys in their 20s go to their parish priest and ask him permission to do anything? I heard that there might have been some issues with this, so I asked my parish priest, and Father Jeff Brasser, may rest in peace. He's no longer with us, and he said, yeah, as long as you recognize the distinction between the church and the lodge. He hadn't studied it, unfortunately, and I'm not saying there's an excuse for any priest to not know this. But I was misguided and at so many levels, and I had to kind of figure it out myself. But that's the way God used my situation.
Yeah.